Working remotely completely changed my life. Now I have time, energy, and freedom to enjoy the things I love. That's why I created a free training showing the exact steps I use to attract remote opportunities. Check the link below and get free access right now. Now let's move on to the modules. Because you already know how to write a function, your next natural step is writing many functions. And when you write many functions in one Python file, this is basically called a module, right? There are some tricks to write your modules the right way, and there are some useful techniques that you can use to reuse your code throughout your application, and I'm gonna show you right now. All right, so let's create a new file called purchase.py. This is gonna be our module that is going to take care of the full process of a purchase. All right, and just for the record, what I'm going to show you right now is not the best way to write a module. Right, I'm only going to write this way for you to see how it works, and in the next steps we are going to improve this. All right, but let's try to think how a user that is logged in a platform that sells products online, what does the user do? What is the process that this user is going to run to make a purchase? Let me close this. So first, the user is going to see the products that are available. Second, the user is going to add products to the cart. After choosing the products that the user wants to buy, it is going to add the product to the cart. When the user finishes adding the product to the cart, the user is going to make an order, right? The user is going to create the order, and then the user is going to pay for the order. And to finish this process, the user is going to receive notifications about the status. So this is a basic process of a purchase online, and we can write functions in this purchase module to represent all of this. So here in this first step, the user needs to see the products that are available. We could create a function called list products, and then implement this logic right here. See the products that are available. Products receive known, return products. Just for demonstration purposes, all right? We don't need to implement the logic for now. So here we would implement the function add to cart. As a parameter, we could pass a list of products. Cart receives products, and then return cart. So add to cart. What else? Then the user can make this order. So def make order. We could pass the parameter cart ID to identify which cart is going to become the order, right? So we'll make an order and cart ID order receives cart ID, and all of the process. Remember that we are just simulating some little logic here inside of the functions for you to see how the process of creating multiple functions inside of the same file works, right? If you were to implement these functions in real life, you will need to really write the logic that does the thing that the name of the function says that it does, right? So anyway, return order, and the user would pay. Could pass the order as a parameter, the order ID as a parameter, and if we need to pass multiple parameters, we can just put a comma here and put the name of the other parameter. We could pass many parameters if we wanted. For example, in the pay function, we could pass the order ID and the payment method. So here we would basically pay for the order, payment status, receives, processed, return payment status. Great. In this case, I thought about the receive notifications because the user is going to receive, right? But in our system is going to send the notification. So send notifications about the status. This could be a function called send notification. We could pass as a parameter like the user email to send the notification and the status. So sending status receives sent, and we return sending status. Alright, so basically this is the purchase module, because we have a Python file, we have multiple functions that are aggregated and they are part of a context. All of these functions are necessary to make the purchase. So this is basically how you write your own module. But this example is the common example of a first module that a beginner programmer writes, because although all of these functions are part of the same context, they are not. Because they are part of the context purchase, but purchase is a context that is too large for you to write the functions in just one module. If you see here, each function belongs to one isolated context. For example, list products. Alright, it belongs to the purchase, but you have a small context that this function fits better. That is the context product. Same thing to the cart. Same thing to the order, to the payment, and to the notifications. Each function that we have written belongs to one unique, smaller context. And how can you see this? How can you notice if the functions that you have written should be in this context or in a smaller context? The technique that I apply is basically I look at that function and I question, is this function part of a CRUD operation? If you don't know this term, CRUD basically stands for create, read, update, and delete. If your function fits one of these 4 operations, that means that probably in the future you're gonna need to write the other ones. Let's see an example here. List products. Basically, this is a read of a CRUD operation. We are reading the data that represents our product. And if we are reading, probably in the future we are going to need to write functions that creates new products, that updates the existing product, and that deletes the existing products. So this function right here already indicates that in the future we're probably gonna have 4 functions about products. Same thing to the cart. Here we are adding items to the cart. If we can add a product to the cart, we're probably gonna need a function that removes the product from the cart. We are probably gonna need a function that updates the cart. And we are probably gonna need a function that deletes the cart. So now let's expand this and let's create a folder called purchase. Instead of creating a file called purchase, we are going to create a folder called purchase. And inside of this folder, we are going to create the modules that we already know that we are gonna need in the future. Alright, so products is the first one, products.py. Cart is another one, cart.py. Order is another one, so order.py. Payment is another one, so payment.py. And notifications is another one, also notifications.py. And in this case, our file purchase.py is going to become obsolete. I don't know how to say it. Leave in the comments, please. Help me with my English. But let's cut this and put in the module products. Let's do the same thing with the add to cart and put in the cart module. Yeah, let's do the same thing with the order. Let's do the same thing with the payment. And let's finish doing the same thing with the notification. Alright, so now instead of having one module with many functions that belong to different contexts, now I have one file per context that represents only that context. And now I'm free to write many other functions that belong to each context inside of each module without growing my code in a messy way, right? Because in our purchase module, if I needed to write each function from each context in the same file, I would have dozens of functions mixed up, and the maintenance would be way harder than now that we have spread it into the right modules, you know. So in this module, notifications.py, for example, we are going to call this function to send an email to notify our user about the status of a specific order. But in the future, I could want to send this notification not via email, but also via WhatsApp. I could want to send via SMS. Do you agree with me? Notification via WhatsApp. Can you see that I already have 3 functions? In a matter of less than a minute, I've already increased the notification context with 2 more functions. And this is gonna happen with all of the modules that I've just created. As the business rules start to appear, we're gonna need to write new functions. So now you can see that even creating new functions here, I'm still organized, because all of this is about notifications, and all of this is aggregated into the notifications module. In this case, the name send notification doesn't make any sense anymore, because the other ones have the name of the channel. So here we're gonna send email. So that's how you create your own modules in Python. And in the next topic, I'm gonna show you how to call and invoke the functions across your modules to start integrating them. And also, I'm gonna show you the modules that Python already provides for us to use. If you still didn't notice, Python already have many modules that comes with Python that have many functions, and we can just use these functions. So stick with me and let's go to the next topic. Working remotely completely changed my life. Now I have time, energy, and freedom to enjoy the things I love. That's why I created a free training showing the exact steps I use to attract remote opportunities. Check the link below and get free access right now.